They tried to handcuff me on my own front lawn, calling themselves HOA cops, all because I refused to join their little homeowners association cult. Veronica, the so-called president, stood there with her fake security guards barking rules I never agreed to. I was staring at the metal glint of handcuffs when it hit me. If I didn't fight back, they'd steamroll my family's legacy. And in 48 hours, I was about to turn her entire empire to ash. It was a crisp September morning, the kind where the lake looked like glass and the air still carried that early fall bite. I was sipping coffee on my deck reviewing blueprints for a renovation project when the sound of car doors slamming shattered the peace. 3 figures marched up my driveway. Veronica Hale led the pack blonde hair, flawless suit, tailored like she thought she was running a Fortune 500 company. Behind her, 2 men in knockoff uniforms, badges too shiny, radios too quiet, boots too new. They carried themselves like mall cops who'd watched one too many crime shows. Mr. Rowe Veronica announced, lifting her little rulebook like it was scripture. "We've documented several violations. Your grass is half an inch too tall, your kayak isn't the approved HOA color, and you failed to submit landscaping plans." I set my coffee down, stood to my full 6'2" height, and told her calmly, "I've never signed an HOA contract. This cabin's been in my family since the 60s, long before your board ever existed." Her smile vanished, replaced by something colder. Authority, she hissed. "You don't understand how things work around here. I have friends on city council. I have the sheriff on speed dial." She called a councilman right there in front of me like it was a theater performance as the 2 fake cops rested hands on their cuffs. One of them even recited a rehearsed line about obstruction of community enforcement. That was my cue. "Which department are you with?" I asked, because impersonating an officer is a felony. I watched the color drain from their faces, but Veronica stepped closer, smug as ever, and shoved a thick packet into my hands. "You've got 48 hours to comply," she sneered. "After that you'll see the consequences." When their car finally disappeared down the road, I looked out at my lake. The lake my grandfather bought at a federal auction 50 years ago, and realized something. She thought intimidation would make me fold, but I wasn't some gullible retiree. I'd spent decades in D.C. dismantling power games far nastier than this. That night I tore into family documents stored in my attic. Old deeds, letters, even dusty cassette tapes my grandfather left behind. And that's when the horror set in. On one tape, dated 1994, I heard a younger version of Veronica's voice planning with her family to slowly seize the lakefront through the HOA. They mentioned my family by name. "The Rowe property will be the hardest. We'll use financial pressure, legal challenges, social isolation." It wasn't paranoia. It was a 30-year conspiracy. Digging deeper, I uncovered connections to State Senator Richard Hawthorne and Pinnacle Development, one of the biggest real estate companies in the state. This wasn't just an overbearing HOA president, this was organized corruption. I felt my stomach sink. For a moment, I doubted myself. Maybe I was insane to fight this. Maybe I should just pay the damn fees and keep my head down. My neighbors were already avoiding me, whispers spreading that I was a troublemaker. When Mrs. Watson, the 75-year-old widow down the street, broke down crying and confessed that Veronica threatened her with a $15,000 penalty just for talking to me, I almost gave in. But then she told me how my grandfather used to plow her driveway every winter, how my family had always stood by the community. "This isn't just about you," she whispered. "It's about all of us." That's when something inside me snapped back into place. If I didn't stand up, nobody could. The next morning, I searched my property and discovered 12 hidden cameras tucked in trees aimed at my windows, even one pointed into my kitchen. They were transmitting straight to the HOA office. Perfect. I set up a live stream on the local community page, over 800 members, and began pulling down cameras one by one, showing them to the audience. "This," I said, holding one up to the camera, "is illegal surveillance. I never consented to this. And if you check state law, this violates privacy and wiretap regulations." Comments flooded in. Shock. Anger. People realized they had cameras too. And then, jackpot, the device near my kitchen window picked up live audio from inside the HOA office. Veronica's voice came through crystal clear. Phase 2 needs to start now. Pressure the Watson woman and force Roe out. Investors are getting impatient. The live stream exploded. Names of residents were mentioned, plans for fake assessments and utility shutoffs. Neighbors finally saw the monster behind the mask. That night, the HOA meeting hall overflowed with 200 furious residents. I walked in with my lawyer, Michael Carter, and investigative journalist Daniel Price, who'd been tracking Veronica's scams across state lines. The air was electric. Veronica strutted to the podium, but the crowd drowned her out with shouts. I stepped forward, holding up the federal deed my grandfather signed with the Department of Defense. My property is exempt from every HOA regulation permanently. Signed, sealed, and stamped by the Secretary of Defense in 1973. The room gasped. Michael took over, his voice booming. And by the way, Veronica Hale is not who she says she is. Her real name is Victoria Hammond. She's wanted in Colorado for real estate fraud and racketeering. Daniel read out her rap sheet, millions stolen through fake HOAs, dozens of families displaced. The crowd erupted, people shouting, neighbors crying. Veronica's perfect mask cracked. She screamed, "You think you're better than me? I grew up with nothing while families like yours lived in comfort. I swore I'd never be powerless again." Her voice shook, raw, venomous. For a second, I almost saw the broken child under the predator, but then she tried to spin it, pointing at me. Lucas Roe is lying. He faked those documents. That's when Daniel's phone buzzed. He held it up. "I just got off the line with the FBI. They've been investigating Victoria for months. They have federal wiretaps of her plotting with Senator Hawthorne, and they're on their way right now." The timing was cinematic. Agents stormed in minutes later, flanked by local deputies who finally had the guts to act. The lead agent announced charges under RICO fraud, identity theft, impersonating law enforcement. Veronica, or Victoria, went pale as paper. When they locked handcuffs on her wrists, she whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "This isn't over. The people I work for don't lose." Her words chilled me more than the cuffs on her wrists, because for once she wasn't bluffing. She was part of something bigger. Darker, a syndicate that had been using HOAs to steal homes across half the country. But that night, in that crowded hall, justice finally broke through her grip. The lesson: bullies thrive on silence, but the moment one person says no, the whole rotten structure starts to crumble.